Hello everyone and welcome to my time-lapse drawing of, well, in this case it's going to be a guy inviting someone to have a BJJ roll with them. If you don't know what BJJ is, that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm quite interested in drawing BJJ stuff. You get a lot of interesting poses, a lot of interesting fight scenes, and I think as someone who's a very big fan of fighting manga and fighting anime such as All Around the Guru, and also Dragon Ball Z, and things like Street Fighter as well, it interests me on a visual scale as well. So I'm just going to talk you through what's happening in the drawing today. As you can see at the moment, apologies for the positioning of the camera, it's not great. I'm blocking out the figure. So if you've seen my previous time lapse, the armbar drawing, that one was worked with a photograph, so I had photograph reference. I still built the image, but I had something to sort of refer to each time. Whereas this one, I'm working very much from my own sort of imagination of what the pose should look like. So once I've got the pose, and you can see it's really quite scratchy, that's something I'm trying to work on a bit. I don't really like how scratchy it is. I then knock it back, so I get a kneadable eraser, so it looks a bit like blue tack or dirty chewing gum, but it isn't, I promise. I'm not that grim. Then I can sort of erase very lightly most of the lines so that I can start going into more detail. And I've actually clipped out a bit of the detail building, mainly because I know it's not the most interesting thing in the world. So, skip that little bit of video out, and now we are drawing the details of the character and of the actual pose itself. I wasn't too happy with how his ear looked there, so I just erased it. But I'm quite happy overall with the pose. For those of you who don't know, in Jiu-Jitsu, we talk about guard a lot. So this position is known as sitting guard, and you might have been watching UFC where there's a guy who's just refusing to stand up. That's because he's wanting to play. He wants to do grappling. He wants to play a submission game. In UFC, I don't think it's particularly well thought of if you do that, and I must admit, in Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, I don't particularly like sitting guard. I much prefer top game. That's probably because I suck at submissions. But I've got time, I'm only blue belt. So, my whole idea with drawing this particular one was, what's your typical Jiu-Jitsu guy look like? And it was that whole, like, Jiu-Jitsu guy goes into the ring and he sits down, says, I'll fight you if you come and sit down next to me. And usually he's got cauliflower ears. It looks like he's got tons of rings on his fingers. That's actually tape, so your joints just get knackered in Jiu-Jitsu, and a lot of it is because of gi gripping. You're holding on to some cotton for dear life, usually trying to choke someone, or you're trying to do spider guard, and it really affects your fingers. So I've seen some guys that are really quite big in the sport. I've had the chance to go to their sort of seminars, and their fingers, these are young guys, they're in their 30s, late 20s, their fingers look like ping pong balls are where the knuckles are. Oh, that's the eraser there. It's not very good. I know that the Meow brothers, their fingers are wrecked. So, yeah, that's one way you can tell a Jiu-Jitsu guy. Another thing is if you see them in gi, the gis look a little bit like a NASCAR, absolutely covered in patches, and it's usually some of it's sponsorship stuff, and I quite like that about Jiu-Jitsu. We've got a very distinctive style for the sport, so I think that was pretty cool. So in terms of the drawing, we've moved on to inking now. I use Staedtler pigment liners, so these are fine liners. In the past, I have used dip pens, so like a G pen or a Maru tip, and I really enjoy them. The only thing is, I hate getting my fingers dirty with the ink, and I have to be quite portable with my materials. I share the desk that I'm drawing on, so I can't really leave things out, and I can't really make a mess. So I use Staedtler fine liner inks. I also use a Pentel brush, so that's like the Japanese style pen brush, and I just changed the ink on that so it's super wet, and I show you that a bit later on in this video when there's some actual black points. But for the most part, the inking is going to be done with steadily refined tips. I tend to use the 0.3 most of all. You get a nice, it's a decent sort of thickness. It's not too thick. You can get some nice variation with that. And later on, I'm just going to go over some of the lines with a 0.2 just to make them a bit heavier, add a bit more depth. I think what I really like, well, I don't know if you ever go to my Instagram page or if you've noticed from the previous drawing, I seem to only ever draw jiu-jitsu guys. I think that's to do with a very early obsession with Dragon Ball Z. So I really like that sort of drawing and fighting characters, and I really like the heavy creases you get on a jiu-jitsu gi. It's really fun to draw, and you can see this with Akira Toriyama's work. If you ever look at the gi that Goku wears, and even down to like the modern casual wear that Trunks and Chi-Chi and Gohan wear, they're very heavily creased. There's some really almost like mountain ridges in those creases, and it's a very stylistic way of drawing, but I really like it, and I think you can get away with that with drawing martial art gear. I think it looks really nice, and it sort of adds that definition. So in terms of martial arts and drawing, you've got a lot of parallels, and I don't think it's any surprise that you get a lot of martial artists that are very interested in art and drawing and have it as their hobby. I remember once watching I can't remember what it was called. There was a BBC TV show about this kung fu practitioner who went to like China and Taiwan, and he was a British guy. He would go and interview all these kung fu experts and stuff. I think it was Mind, Body and Kick-Ass Moves. That's it. Really enjoyed that. He goes to this one guy and he's talking about yin and yang. So like soft and hard practice, and so he would be doing punch exercises, and then afterwards he would do traditional Chinese painting while standing on a box of eggs. Bit crazy, but I can sort of see that. It sort of balances your personality out a wee bit. Oh, sorry. I didn't want the camera to shake too much, so I took the picture away, but don't worry, it's coming back in 5, 4, there we go. So yeah, that's one parallel, this idea, this philosophical idea of yin and yang and soft and hard. With drawing as well, I find drawing to be very physical, so I don't get much chance to draw. I spend I have a 9 to 5, which I can't really draw in, unfortunately. That would be great if I could. And I tend to, when I do draw, I find that I'm quite rusty, and it's more as I've sort of gotten older and a bit more aware of myself that art and drawing is very physical. So it is that hand-eye coordination, and if you go back to how scratchy and how sort of messy the original drawing was there, it's because, getting my head warmed up, like getting my hand to do what I want it to do, to do what the brain is trying to tell it to do, and it doesn't, it takes a while to sort of get in there. And it's the same for inking, so you've got to have quite steady hands, you've got to be able to get your hands to create a smooth line without having to drag it around too much. It's one of the most common art mistakes people have, is they draw little jaggedy lines. You might have seen this in your own stuff if you draw, instead of doing nice long smooth lines. And it's better for you just as you're learning to draw. It's easier to keep track of one line than it is 4, 5, 6. For myself, all I need to do is practice more and try and make art more of a daily part of my life, which is definitely a goal for myself. But otherwise, practice and practice. It's just like a sport. Artists, athletes, they're not that different at the end of the day. It's all skills. So we're nearing the end of the video. I'm just putting a little bit of shadow in I purposely didn't tone this one, so I didn't put any hatching on this drawing. Reason being, I kind of want to do some other stuff with this. I'm really not happy with that speech bubble. I'm going to edit that out digitally, I think. It's a shame when you're drawing a moleskin, because it's not quite white paper. You can't just put white paint on top. You have to Photoshop it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's drawing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, why not just click the like button, or click, you maybe click subscribe. I'm trying to do these once a week. So yeah, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.